The Night of No Moon. The Night of No Moon. It was the evening of Diwali. Even the ruins and dilapidated houses of Srinagar were glowing with luck. Boys and girls from the town, holding lamps in white trays, were heading towards the temple. Their faces were more radiant than the lamps they carried. Every home was sparkling with light, except for the 7-story mansion of Pandit Devdutt, which stood in darkness like a black cloud, grave and terrifying. It was grave because it had not forgotten its days of prosperity, and terrifying because the brightness around seemed to mock it. There was a time when even envy would gnash its teeth in its presence, and now, contempt mocks it. The gate, once guarded by sentinels, was now flanked by castor and oleander trees. Even wild bulls will walk in arrogantly into the drawing room. The upper rooms, where once beautiful women sang melodious songs, now echoed with the sweet cooing of wild pigeons. Like the conduct of a student from a foreign school, the roots of the building were shaking, and the walls were crumbling like the heart of a widow. But who can blame time? Criticizing time is futile and mistaken. It was the result of foolishness and short-sightedness. It was the night of the no moon. As if defeated by the light, darkness had taken refuge in that massive mansion. Pandit Devdutt sat silently in his dimly lit room, deeply absorbed in worry. For a month now, the ruthless passage of time had turned his wife, Girija's, life into a cruel joke. Panditji was prepared to endure poverty and sorrow. Faith in fate gave him patience. But this new calamity was beyond his endurance. Poor Panditji spent his days sitting by Girija's bedside, looking at her withered face, filled with anguish and tears. When Girija, despairing of her life, wept, he would comfort her. "Girija, don't cry, you'll get better soon." Pandit Devdutt's ancestors were once prosperous traders. They dealt in large transactions, mainly with prominent landowners and royalty. At that time, honesty was not so cheaply sold. Even vast sums were trusted without formal agreements. But the rebellion of 1857 wiped out many states and kingdoms, and with them, the once flourishing family of Tiwaris. Their treasure was looted, and their ledgers were reduced to scrap. When peace returned and the states were restored, times had changed. Promises were now subject to written agreements, and the distinction between plain and decorated papers had become significant. When Devdutt came of age, all he had left was this crumbling mansion. There was no means of livelihood. Farming required hard labor and suffering. Business demanded capital and intelligence. His education was not enough to secure a job, and the family's honor prevented them from accepting charity. Thus, 2 or 3 times a year, he would visit his old clients' homes uninvited, and whatever farewell gift or travel allowance he received would sustain him. If any sign of ancestral prestige remained, it was in the heap of old letters and promissory notes. Their ink faded like his dim fortune. Pandit Devdutt valued these more than life itself. On the second day of Diwali, when every house worshipped Lakshmi, Panditji, with great pomp, worshipped these bundles. If not Lakshmi herself, at least they were her memorials. The second day was a day of homage to Panditji's pride. Call it irony or foolishness, but Pandit Mahashay was immensely proud of those papers. When any dispute arose in the village, these decaying documents often came in handy, and the adversary was forced to concede. If people, despite not having seen a weapon for 70 generations, could take pride in being warriors, then Pandit Devdutt's pride in those documents, hiding 70 lakh rupees, could not be deemed unreasonable. It was the same no moon night, but the Diwali lights had already burnt out. It was an auspicious night for thieves and gamblers, as the loss tonight would be a loss for the entire year. The arrival of Lakshmi was celebrated. Gold coins were being tossed around like cowries. In the still of the night, Pandit Devdutt was the only person in town not obsessed with amassing wealth. Since dawn, Girija's condition had worsened. The fierce fever was making her lose consciousness by the minute. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and in a very faint voice said, "Today is Diwali." Devdutt was so despondent that seeing Girija conscious didn't even bring him joy. He replied, "Yes, today is Diwali." With tear-filled eyes, Girija looked around and said, "Won't there be lamps lit in our house?" Devdutt broke down in tears. Girija continued in the same faint voice, "Look, today of all days, our house remains dark. Lift me up, I too want to light lamps in my home." These words pierced Devdutt's heart. A person's final moments are often filled with desires and emotions. In this town lived Lala Shankar Das, a well-known physician. Instead of medicines, he had a printing press in his life-giving dispensary. Medicines were rarely made, but advertisements were frequently published. He used to say that illness was merely a pretense for the rich, and according to political economy, this luxury item should be taxed as much as possible. If someone was poor, so be it. If someone died, let them die. What right did they have to fall ill and demand free treatment? It was free treatment that had weakened and enfeebled the people of India. For a month, Devdutt had been coming to him daily to get medicine, but the physician never paid him enough attention for him to express his dire condition. Devdutt had tried various ways to reach the soft spot in the physician's heart, coming with tears in his eyes, but the physician's heart was made of stone. There was no soft spot to reach. It was that same terrifying no-moon night. The stars in the sky shone even brighter past midnight, as if smiling mockingly at Srinagar's extinguished Diwali. In a state of restlessness, Devdutt got up from Girija's bedside and headed towards the physician's house. He knew that Lalaji would never come without a fee, but even in despair, hope does not leave one's side. Devdutt kept moving forward. At that time, the physician was busy writing an advertisement for his miraculous cure, Bindu. The expressive language and persuasive power of the advertisement made one wonder whether he was a leading physician or a highly skilled writer. Folks, here's a glimpse of his Urdu advertisement. Nazarene. Do you know who I am? Your pale face, your sagging body, your exhaustion after the slightest effort, your deprivation of the world's pleasures, your darkness, all answer this question in the negative. Listen, who am I? I am the one who has taken the vow to rid the world of human diseases. I am the one who has resolved to root out quacks and fake physicians who sell wheat-like remedies and purify the world. I am that astonishing person, the eloquent one, who turns the unhappy into the joyous, the unlucky into the fortunate, the coward into the brave, the jackal into the lion. And this is not through any magic, not through any spell, it is the humble power of my latest cure called as Amrit Bindu. What is Amrit Bindu? Only I know. Maharishi Agastya whispered its formula into Dhanvantari's ear. When you open the VP parcel, its reality will dawn upon you. It is the water of life. It is the essence of manliness, the elixir of wisdom, the source of intellect, and the polish of the mind. If years of poetic competitions haven't made you a poet, if despite constant rote learning, you have failed in exams, if despite flattering brokers and appeasing clients, you still wander around the courthouse like a hungry dog, if you shout until your throat is sore and pound the table, but still fail to make an impact with your speech, then use Amrit Bindu. The biggest benefit you will notice on the first day is that your eyes will open, and you will never again fall into the trap of advertising quacks. The physician had just finished reading the advertisement aloud. His eyes reflected a sense of pride and hope when Devdutt's voice was heard from outside. The physician was very pleased. His fee was double at night. When he went out with a lantern, Devdutt, weeping, clung to his feet and said, Vaidyaji, have mercy on me at this moment. Girija is now a guest for only a few more moments. Only you can save her. Of course, whatever is written in my fate will happen, but if you come now and take a look, my heart will be at peace. I will be assured that I did everything I could for her. God knows I am not in a position to offer you anything, but as long as I live, I will sing your praises and remain your devoted servant. The physician initially felt some pity, but this was like the glow of a firefly, quickly consumed by the vast darkness of self-interest. It was still the night of the no moon. Even the trees had fallen silent. The winners were waking up their children to give them gifts. The losers were begging their angry wives for forgiveness. Amidst this, the continuous sound of bells pierced through the wind and darkness, and their pleasant sound was a relief in the stillness. The sound grew closer until it drowned in the ruins near Pandit Devdutt. At that time, Panditji was drowning in an ocean of despair. He was too grieved to even tend to his beloved Girija. What should he do? How could he bring this heartless physician here? Cruel man, I would have served you my whole life. I would have printed your advertisements. I would have ground your medicines. Today, Panditji realized that the documents worth 70 lakh rupees were not even worth a few cowries. The pride of ancestral prestige had now faded from his eyes. He took out the velvet pouch from the chest and began offering each document, the last remnants of his father's earnings, which had been guarded like his honor, to the flame of the lamp. Just as a body nurtured with love and care is consigned to the pyre, these paper effigies too became food for the blazing lamp. Just then, someone called out to Panditji from outside. Startled, he lifted his head. He awoke from his daze, groped in the darkness, and came to the door to see several men holding torches and an elephant uprooting the castor trees that stood like sentinels at the gate with its trunk. A handsome young man, with a saffron silk turban on his head, a half-moon-shaped sandalwood mark on his forehead, a well-groomed moustache standing like a spear, and a face radiating authority and light, sat on the elephant. He looked like a nobleman. His patent tunic, fitted trousers, sword hanging at his waist, and the golden necklace and chain around his neck suited his dashing physique. As soon as he saw Panditji, he placed his foot in the stirrup, dismounted, and respectfully bowed to him. Somewhat embarrassed by his humble gesture, Panditji asked, "Where have you come from?" The young man replied in very polite words, his face exuding sincerity, "I am your old servant. My home is in Rajnagar. I am the feudal lord there. Your ancestors have done great favors to my forefathers. Whatever prestige and wealth I have now is the result of your ancestors' grace and mercy. I have heard your name from many of my relatives, and I have longed to meet you. Today, I finally got the chance. My life is now fulfilled." Tears welled up in Pandit Devdutt's eyes. Ancestral pride was a tender part of his heart. The humility that had enveloped his face for so long disappeared for a while. Adopting a solemn tone, he said, "It's your grace to say so. Otherwise, I am such a wretch that I don't even deserve to call myself a descendant of those people." By then, the servants had laid out the rug in the drawing room. The two men sat down and started conversing. Each word was like a balm to Panditji, reviving his spirits like morning air opens up flowers. Panditji's grandfather had lent 25,000 rupees to the young Thakur's grandfather. The Thakur was now planning to go to Gaya to perform the last rites for his ancestors, and it was necessary to repay every penny of the debt before doing so. The Thakur found this debt recorded in the old ledger. 25,000 had now become 75,000. The Thakur had travelled 200 miles to repay this debt. Religion is that power which kindles noble thoughts in the heart. However, to translate those thoughts into action requires a pure and strong soul, otherwise, those same thoughts become cruel and sinful. Finally, the Thakur asked, "Do you still have those documents?" Devdutt's heart sank. He steadied himself and replied, "Perhaps I have them. I can't say for sure." The Thakur casually said, "Look for them. If they are found, I will take them with me." Pandit Devdutt got up, but his heart was cold. He began to doubt whether fate was showing him a green field only to lead him astray. Who knows if that piece of paper had turned to ashes or not? He didn't even know if it existed in the first place. If not found, who would give the money? Oh, what a tragedy! The glass of milk is right in front of him, but it might slip from his grasp. Oh Lord, let that document be found. We have endured much suffering, please have mercy on us. In this state of hope and despair, Devdutt went inside and began searching through the remaining papers in the flickering light of the lamp. He leaped with joy and, filled with excitement, jumped up and down like a madman. Then he ran to Girija, embraced her, and said, "Beloved, if God wills, you will be saved now." In his frenzy, he didn't realize that Girija was no longer there, only her lifeless body remained. Devdutt took the document and hurried to the door, moving as if he had wings on his feet. But here, he paused and, restraining the surge of joy in his heart, said, "Here it is. I've found the document. It's a stroke of luck, otherwise, the papers worth 70 lakhs would have become food for termites." Sometimes, sudden success is hindered by doubt. When the Thakur reached out to take the document, Devdutt feared that he might tear it up. Although this doubt was unfounded, man is but a puppet of weaknesses. The Thakur sensed his feelings and casually took the document. After examining it in the light of the torch, he said, "Now I am fully convinced. Here is your money before you. Bless me that my ancestors may attain salvation." Saying this, he took out a pouch from his waist and, from it, took out 75 1,000 rupee notes and handed them to Devdutt. Panditji's heart was pounding, and his pulse was racing. He looked around cautiously to ensure no one else was nearby and then, with trembling hands, took the notes. In a vain attempt to show his superiority, he didn't even bother to count the notes. He just glanced at them and then quickly put them in his pocket. It was still the night of the no moon. The heavenly lamps were also dimming, signaling the arrival of Surya Narayan. The east had donned a turquoise robe, and the west showed a faint white glow. After bidding farewell to the Thakur, Pandit Devdutt entered the house. At that moment, his heart was illuminated by the pure light of generosity. No supplicant could have left his house disappointed. It was decided that the Satyanarayan Katha would be celebrated with great pomp. The thoughts of clothes and jewelry for Girija were finalized. As soon as he reached the inner chamber, he bowed his head before the Shaligram with mind, speech, and action, then carefully placed the remaining letters back in the same velvet pouch. However, now he had no thoughts of a possible resurrection among these dead documents. Rather, free from worries about sustenance, he could now take pride in his ancestral prestige. At that moment, he was intoxicated with patience and enthusiasm. I don't need much more wealth in life. God has given me enough. With this, Girija and I can live our lives in contentment. Little did he know that Girija's life had already ended. The thought tickled his mind that when Girija heard this joyous news, she would surely get up. It was the anxiety and suffering that had reduced her to this state. For someone who never had enough to eat, who was never free from the heart-wrenching bonds of hopeless patience and poverty, what other condition could she have? With these thoughts, he went to Girija and gently shook her, saying, "Girija, open your eyes. See, God has heard your prayers and shown mercy on us. How are you feeling?" But when Girija did not respond at all, he lifted the sheet and looked at her face. A heart-wrenching sigh escaped from his chest. He sat down, holding his head. Blood-red tears dripped from his eyes. Oh, did this wealth come at such a high price? Was I given the value of this beloved life by the court of God? God, you are indeed just. I need Girija, not the money. This transaction is too costly. The dark night of the no moon had ended, just like Girija's dark life. Farmers ploughing the fields were singing in high, pleasant voices. Children shivering in the cold were praying for the sun god to come out. Village women had gathered at the well, some to fill water, some to laugh. One was imitating her toothless mother-in-law while drawing water from the well. Another, leaning against a pillar, was whispering secrets of love to her friend with a smile. Old women, carrying their crying grandsons in their arms, were cursing their daughters-in-law for not returning from the well after an hour, but the royal physician, Lala Shankar Das, was still in deep sleep. Coughing children and groaning old men had gathered at the door of his dispensary. A little away from the crowd, 2 or 3 handsome but withered young men were pacing, hoping to talk to the physician in private. Just then, Pandit Devdutt, bareheaded, with a frightening appearance, eyes red, carrying a bundle of papers, came running and started shouting so loudly at the dispensary door that the physician woke up and called his servant to open the door. The servant had returned late at night from a community council. He suffered from the disease of deep sleep, which even the physician's continuous lectures and scolding medicines could not cure. Pandit Devdutt went inside and placed the bundle of 75,000 rupees before the physician, saying, "Vaidyaji, these are 75,000 rupees. This is your reward and your fee. Come and see Girija, and do something so that she opens her eyes just once. This is offered for just one glance. Just one glance. You love money more than human life. Right. Here it is before you. I would love to have Girija open her eyes, just for once, and talk to me at the cost of all of these rupees." The physician looked at Devdutt with remorseful sympathy and said only, "I am deeply sorry. I will forever be in your debt, but you have taught me a lesson. If God wills, I will never make such a mistake again. I am deeply sorry. Truly, I am." These words came literally from the physician's heart.
The end of the story. This story was originally written more than 100 years ago by Premchand, a legendary author of Hindi literature. Do let us know if you liked the story. If it so happens that you did not like the story, even then, please let us know your choice, so that we can find something you would like. If you liked the story, why not share the sentiments with your friends? Also subscribe to easily find more stories like these from other Indian authors.